Keith, how are you? How are you feeling this week ahead of quite a big game and Manchester United visiting the GT?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. Had a good training week. A lot, obviously, to digest as normal. Process doesn't really change in terms of what we do game to game. In terms of debrief, pick the holes out of the performance, where we can improve individually, collectively. Yeah, it's been the usual process really. I think as the week's gone on, the mood naturally improves. Time's a little bit of a healer.
Absolutely. Well, you obviously disappointed after that result at Fulham, but what's been the focus this week in terms of putting the things right that you identified as not being right in that game?
I just think real clarity around what we want to achieve. We've mentioned this before, regardless of the result or the performance. Don't tend to get too carried away. I'm very understanding of where we are, where we need to go as we're building a new side and relationships, which I constantly go on about because I feel like they're really important. The understanding of the player you're playing next to or in front of you. They're really important aspects of the game. So the more we do that on the training pitch, I feel the better we will get. But just bringing real clarity to what we want from our game plan and identifying what didn't go so well last weekend, just putting that right collectively, which I think is important. I'm big into players having a voice and opinion because I think it needs to come from that place where they're really involved in the process.
You get a different feeling from the players ahead of home games as opposed to away games. Obviously your home form is going to be crucial this year, as it always is, but the home form has been better so far than the away form.
Yeah, it was similar last year, and I think there was them discussions were going on this time last year as well, and I can't say I did. If anything, I felt that the day before Fulham was probably one of the best training sessions I'd seen from the players in terms of confidence, the conviction and everything we did, the belief, the vibe and energy around the training ground. So no, it's not something that I've sensed, I must be honest, but I'm looking forward to getting back on home soil tomorrow.
Well, listen, you obviously beat Manchester United earlier this year at home, so that's a positive thing to draw from going into the game. What have you made of them so far this season under Ruben Amorim? Obviously, they've had a tricky start as well. What's your assessment of them so far?
I think they're a very talented set of players. They have a very defined way of playing the game that they know very, very well. I think they've added some quality players. One left this building to join them who we're very well aware of, and I'm sure we'll come on to. Yeah, they're a talented bunch of players that will cause us a lot of problems if we don't do things correctly tomorrow.
Have you identified anything specific from that game you think that you can, from the game back in May obviously, that you can take into this game as well?
Yeah, obviously watch that game back early part of this week as well as the other games that they've played more recently this season, because the personnel make a big difference in terms of the actions. The top end of the pitch being a prime example of that, with what they've added in the summer. Brian, Cunha, Sesko as examples, and how that might look different to the way it did when we played them back in the last season. So yeah, system might be similar, but personnel make a big difference to a system.
And obviously in terms of personnel for them, you said Brian is going to come back. How do you think he's going to be received by the fans? Positively, warmly, and I guess you guys are in a good position, or a better position as any, to keep him quiet maybe? Yeah,
I think Brian should get a really good reception from the fans. I think Brian epitomises, I've said this before, when he left, epitomises everything good about this football club. 6 years at the club, couple in the championship, arrived as a 19-year-old, I think Brian was, from France, spoke very little English, developed as a young man, developed as a player, was given time, patience, support. And I think the way it went last year was the culmination of that 6-year work, that 6-year journey where so many people in that building played a part in his development. And I know for a fact he really appreciates that. He appreciates the fans. I think it just epitomises what this club is about. So I think Brian rightly should get a really good reception. Having said that, I don't want us to give him a nice reception on the pitch. Yes, we know all about him, all his qualities. We're very aware of those, what a good player he is, and we'll hopefully try to nullify those and make it an afternoon that he doesn't enjoy.
Roy Keane was quite complimentary and supportive of you this week. I don't know if did you catch his comments on the podcast? I mean, he was talking about obviously Brentford being a strategic club with patience that would support you, and that Brentford should have enough quality actually to stay away from trouble. I mean, what do you think of his assessment? Do you think it's accurate, his perception of how things are at the moment?
Well, we're 5 league games in, 2 cup games into a season. I've kind of alluded to this before, that we are forming a new team. Everybody knows and everybody's speaking about it and writing about it enough that there's been a lot of change at the football club, myself included. We're making steps, and sometimes those steps and those strides aren't in the direction we want. And I think you have to accept that, you have to understand that. And going back to what I just discussed about Brian, it's really important for me to maintain the type of environment that's being created here where players can develop. We put internal pressure on ourselves. We don't particularly need the external pressure to fuel anything from within. I think there's that intrinsic motivation as an individual and ultimately collectively to be the best versions of ourselves, and that's not always going to be perfect, clearly. Last weekend being an example of that. But again, we don't tend to get too carried away one way or the other.
He seems supportive of you, and you talked about growing the players and the space there is for them to develop. What about your own growth and development in the head coach role so far? Like, how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, I think you're constantly learning. That's the reality of it. Regardless of the role you're in, this is a very high-profile role where every decision gets scrutinised because of the nature of the league and again the role that I'm in, and you're constantly evaluating that. But again, without getting carried away, you've got certain principles and values that I want to live by. I want our team to live by on a day-to-day basis. Foundations that I think will keep us in a good place. It's a constant evolution, day to day, week to week, in terms of the opposition you're up against, but fundamentally recognising what I stand for and what I want the team to stand for. Thank you.
Hi.
Hey.
A 4-3 win for Brentford against Manchester United back in May. Firstly, what are your memories of that match, and what kind of game are you expecting this time?
Yeah, it was a roller coaster game, wasn't it? There was a lot of them last season. There was a lot of free scoring encounters throughout the season, and the way that the team was set up and the nature of it. At times our games were like basketball, so a very, very exciting game. A game I thought we deserved to win. Playing very well at that stage of the season. Again, I touched on it before. I think system-wise, I think Manchester United have a way of playing, but I do think personnel within a system dictates a lot of that. I think that was very evident in the way that they recruited in the summer. So what I'm expecting is a difficult game, a team that will be well set up to try and feed the front three that they have. They are very dangerous players, talented individuals in midfield, runs beyond our back line. I'm expecting a tough game, but yeah, we know what way they play. They'll have an idea what we do, obviously. We'll have our own game plans, and then we try to nullify everything they throw at us.
And after the disappointment of the weekend, what kind of reaction do you want to see from your players in front of your home fans? What will be your message to the players before they go out?
Yeah, the message doesn't really tend to change week to week. It's just be us. You know, I think we've got a strong identity as a football club, and I've said this throughout the time I've been in charge, that I've wanted to maintain that and enhance that. I think it's really important to me to understand what we're about, what type of environment we create when teams come to town. I don't want it to be a nice environment for teams to play in, I really don't. I really like the idea of us being horrible to play against at home and creating that environment where it's niggly. We alter the momentum of games when needed. And I just think we need to simplify the game at times, and ultimately I just want us to be a team that's connected with and without the ball.
Yeah. And to create that environment, what are you asking for from the fan base as well tomorrow?
Our fans have been outstanding. I've mentioned this a few weeks ago. I think our fans are very, very real. They understand the landscape. They understand what goes on. I think, and I've seen this from different quarters when teams get into the Premier League, I think after a year or two, fans can think that they belong at that level, and they have a sense of entitlement of what the team should be doing and how they should be playing. I don't think our fans are like that. I think they relish where we are because of recent times. They don't take things for granted. They're understanding of what's going on at the club with the new chapter that we're on. Our fans are pretty special.
Just finally, is there any concern that Brian Mbeumo knows too much Too many secrets.
Yeah, of course there is. Brian's close with the vast majority of the group. We've only changed 4 or 5 players, I think, since he's here. He's got really good friends. I trust not many of them will have told him anything over the last day or two around the way we'll be playing, but he'll obviously know the habits of the players and how they do things. So I'm sure he's feeding a few things into Ruben. But it will be nice to see him. And again, I hope Brian, and I sincerely think he will get a really good reception.
Brilliant, thank you, good luck.
Thank you.
Still under media Marlow. Okay.
Hi Keith.
Hey,
I
Jack.
just wanted to go back to the Fulham game, if you don't mind. So you conceded 2 goals within the space of 90 seconds after the game. In the club interview, you said that was something that you were going to look into. I was wondering what you discovered from that.
I didn't think we managed it very well as a group. If you look at where the second goal came from, it was from a throw-in. Basics of the game, I speak about this word quite a lot. I think basics of the game are really, really important. Basics, foundations allow you to grow in a game, allow you at times when you're not playing particularly well to, if you're doing basics really well, to stay in a game. And then from that base where you can grow in confidence, you can start doing things and constantly stopping the opposition doing what they want to do is a big feature of the way I think the game should be played. So to concede in the way we did, the manner, the timing, where it came from, a restart, something we work on, I felt was disappointing. So something we've addressed this week clearly, and hopefully we've sorted that out.
So I just wanted to have a little look into the amount of times you're conceding twice within 5 minutes since the start of last season, and it's happened 7 times, 3 of which have come against Fulham. Is it merely a case of players not following the basics, or is it potentially a vulnerability that's coming to light?
Yeah, it's probably not for me to comment too much about last season, to be honest, because obviously I wasn't in charge, but I'm aware of those issues and the timing of the goals. I think it's really important. I've had it in different environments I've been in, and I think you need to be careful about how much you make of an issue, because you don't want it to take over the players' heads. Where if they concede a goal, they go too defensive. You just want to tend to stay with the game really, and the game plan. When I look at football games and sport, I suppose in general, there's always games within the game, and that's a game. And you need to manage those moments, and the momentum swings within sport, within games are really telling for me. When a team slightly gets on top, or if you take a backward step, sometimes that can be very detrimental to the performance, the scoreline. So I think you need to be very delicate how you approach things like that. But ultimately, what I want the players to do is just manage moments.
Okay. I actually want to go back to something you said after the Chelsea game that intrigued me, and you referred to building a football team like, let me phrase this properly, you can't build a house by putting the windows in first. So I was just wondering if you'd give us a bit of insight into how you hope to build your metaphorical footballing house at Brentford.
Yeah, foundations and basics of the game, I think, again, really, really important. I think most teams are built on really, really solid foundations. What your team looks like without the ball, how compact they are, how connected they are, allows you to be a very efficient team to get the ball back in its purest and simplest form, I think. So that would be something I would describe as a foundation, as the building blocks to succeed. And I think from that you can start adding layers to what you do with the ball. And again, going back to the relationships of the players, how often they play together, how often they train together, helps that.
So what would you say would be the next step in the evolution?
I think there's constant steps and constant blocks that you need to put in place. You know, I felt like before last weekend we were in a really good place with where we were without the ball. You know, I say this quite a lot. I can't get too up or down, but off the back of the Chelsea and Villa games, I wasn't going around the streets of Brentford with a megaphone. I was pretty calm about where we were. I was liking certain aspects of where we were as a team, knowing that we needed to improve in a lot of areas. But defensively and certainly without the ball, and the structure of the team looked pretty good. And that wasn't the case against Fulham in parts of the game. So again, it's always revisiting areas where you need to improve. Will it always be perfect? No, we got it wrong last weekend. It didn't quite work, and we got what we deserved from the game really. But again, there's no overreaction.
Okay, and finally, I'm asking this on behalf of Sam, who couldn't make it today, and he just wanted to ask about how Nathan Collins is stepping up as a captain, how the players have received him over the couple of months, and how he deals with the sort of situations like you went through on Monday.
Nathan stepped in really well. He's captain of club and country now. He's young to be doing that, but I've mentioned this before, he's matured a lot. I feel over the last 12 to 18 months, I felt like he was the absolute right candidate to step into those shoes that Christian Norgard left. And I think it's constant learning when you're a player, especially when you're a younger player like Nathan is. What I've been very mindful of with Nathan is that he doesn't try to do too much with the responsibility of the armband. I think that's really key. I think he only just needs to add a little bit on top of his game, whether that's communication. I don't want him getting pulled in different directions off the pitch with responsibilities. I think that's key because he needs to focus on his performance. So how he's been welcomed by everybody has been how I anticipated to be, very, very well.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Cheers, Zach.
Who'd like to go next? Yeah, sorry, I can see your hand.
Hey.
In your last game against Fulham, Pinnock scored no goal. When an accident like that happens, how do you go about rebuilding a player's confidence and trying to get them back to their best?
Pretty simply with Ethan, don't place any responsibility on Ethan's back. I think you've got to wind back where it stemmed from. I think with any goals, you tend to focus on the final action. It was obviously very unfortunate for Ethan, but I haven't spoken to Ethan about it because I don't really see any blame attached to Ethan. It was the type of delivery, whipped, windy, slightly out of position possibly as a back line, but it's the steps that get Fulham to that stage that I'll be more concerned about.
Sure, and then just on a more general note, if a player's going through a dip of confidence, do you have methods you go about helping them get back to their form and getting back to their usual ways? Yeah,
I think it's the environment that's been created, certainly from me, but the staff around the players, I think, provide that on a daily basis where they're understanding that they're human beings, they're not robots, they're going to make mistakes. I think confidence is a huge part of any sport. So you'll see naturally some players that they just coast along and they're in a good place. You tend to not have to speak to them too much. I think you need to spend a little bit more time with the ones where you can sense that they're not quite themselves for whatever reason, and it goes back to the persons first of all, not necessarily the player.
Sure. And then if selected, Michael Coyote this weekend could equal his total Premier League starts from last campaign, and it's only September. What is it about his game that you like so much?
He only signed in January though, so he wasn't here for a full season. But he's doing very well. He's defensively tuned into the game. I think he takes pride in defending, which not all defenders do. I think he relishes the defensive side of it. I think a lot of defenders now see themselves as attacking players and just want to do what they do with the ball and drive forward and make overlaps and underlaps. I think Michael really takes pride in his work day to day. Very infectious character. He settled at the club pretty immediately, to be honest. There was no language barrier, very, very good English. And I just think his natural appetite and enthusiasm for his craft and his game is so infectious.
He's also completed the most amount of dead ball passes other than your goalkeeper in your squad. He's had some very impressive throw-ins. When was that talent identified by your team?
Way before he signed. I was a set-piece coach last year, so obviously when his name came on the radar and we started looking at potential targets and him being one, he obviously got my vote to bring into the bill. But we've obviously got other players that have got long throws as well, but his is pretty special.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Joe?
Okay.
Hey, John.
So we've spoken already about how good the home form is and how well managed those first two games were at home this season. But one of the key reasons for those performances, from what I could see, was Jordan Henderson, and I thought he stood out in both of those, the Villa game and the Chelsea game. But your next two home games, you have Man United, Man City, and Liverpool. Is someone with Jordan's experience particularly crucial in a tough run of home games like this?
Yeah, for sure. What we need from Jordan is that experience to spread throughout the team, and those communication skills, the experiences that he's been in on the pitch, not getting too carried away, understanding that there's going to be periods of pressure in games when you play against that level of opposition. It's only natural. Momentum always swings within games, and I think you're right. I think that's exactly what's needed from Jordan, to be that calm presence in midfield, to communicate, engage with other players, calm things down when situations become a little bit lively on the pitch, and constantly communicating to the rest of his players.
And I mean, I was actually going to touch on that as well. You can see that when he's playing, you can see him engaging with individual players, like before his debut against Villa. You could see it before the match, going up to individual players. Especially judging by what you said about Nathan and how you don't want to add too much more responsibility to him. What kind of specific instructions do you give to Jordan on how he can utilise his leadership ability within this team?
I think there might be certain players on a certain day where you feel like they might need a little bit of a nudge or a little bit of an arm around them, or sometimes certain players you need to get into them a little bit to stay on top of them. I think it depends on the individual, really. But there'll always be a couple of key messages, I suppose, I would try and get across, where I feel are the most important ones to emphasise from a different voice. I think sometimes it's quite powerful coming from a player when it's in the dressing room. So I think Jordan relays those messages really well.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers, Sean.